Hello and welcome back to Impact Factor. I am your host, Katie Van Aken, and I have another interview episode for you today. This week, where I interviewed one of my good friends who went to grad school with me for a few years. We overlapped, and he just recently wrapped up and finished. And he's about to start his new job, and so we'll hear a little bit from him about wrapping up and some of the tips he learned throughout that process. So, without further ado, here's my good friend, Mark Staub. All right, so you are Dr. Staub, is that correct?
That is correct now, yes.
Now you are. Has it gotten old yet?
It didn't really hit me when I did my defense over Zoom, of course, because
Of course.
that's how it is. They all said after the question session, Dr. Staub, and it kind of when you get to that point, it's kind of like finally, it's not.
I know, it's true.
When you start, you think it's going to be the biggest thing, but it's like, yeah, at this point it should be. So yeah,
it's just so much. Yeah, it's just like such a long haul, and you're finally there, and you're like, that's it, 3 letters.
Yeah. So, but yes, and then the dissertation, I guess it's submitted to the thing, but it's all the paperwork going through to get it actually to the library. So,
did you walk?
That should be done by the end of this week. So I guess that's.
Did you walk with the June graduating class?
No, I didn't want to walk. So
not
I didn't do any of that stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump back a little bit. So, so you came to Drexel from where?
So, I did my undergrad at Gettysburg College, and I was a chemistry major there. I actually took a year off before I went to Drexel. So that had to do with how I decided I wanted to get my PhD. I thought I took the MCAT. I was going to go to med school until my senior year of undergrad. And I took anatomy and physiology, and because I was a chemistry major, I was also taking all the senior year chemistry courses. So physical chemistry, specifically an elective class that was taught by a professor who came from a materials engineering background. He taught a materials chemistry class. I had actually never heard of material science and engineering as something to do as a major, because I came from a small town. I like chemical engineering I knew of, so I was actually looking at programs for that. But loved the materials chemistry class. Talked to him a lot. He kind of got me into looking at material science and engineering, and then so I looked at that in chemical engineering programs. And then late in my senior year, I decided I'd much rather do something in either physical chemistry or like materials chemistry engineering, specifically with polymers. So because I decided late in my senior year, took a year off. Then I got a job at Becton Dickinson for a year as an analytical chemist in their diagnostic systems lab. So I was really open with them, told them I took the job, but I'm like, I plan on going back to grad school. I don't know if they didn't think I was serious, but
I mean, some people probably say that and then they don't end up going
and then
back.
they see a paycheck and they're like, well, maybe I'll wait a little bit. Then you hear it a lot. You wait too long. You're married. You have a house, and you're like, well,
yep.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do homework again. That's the.
Oh, that's the.
So you always knew that you were going to go back. That's cool.
Yeah, so I had that entire year I was working. At night I was studying. I took the GRE and looking at programs and applying, and yeah.
Nice. Do you think you learned anything from that year off that helped you jumping into grad school, or was it just like nice to take a break from the academic world?
So I kind of learned that I definitely wanted to go back, because
that's good.
The one thing the PhD gives you is that a lot more freedom. Even if you want to go into industry, it gives you a lot more freedom, because you're viewed more of as an asset than just an employee more when you have the PhD and the higher education. As just with the BS, usually kids come out with the BS, and if you start working at a company, it's more of a lab tech type position that you're looking at. And to move up, it's either some sort of higher education is almost, that's who the roles I saw people in where I wanted to get to someday, most of them had at least a master's degree, unless they worked there for about 20 years. So,
Yeah. So that's good
yeah.
actually. So it definitely gave you perspective for like what you wanted to
Oh,
do
yeah.
by seeing those people in those roles. So that's
Yeah.
good. Um, what did you do research at all at Gettysburg?
So, yeah, so I actually, I never had academic research since I started grad school.
Mhm.
So when I worked at Gettysburg after my sophomore year, that the summer after my sophomore year, I started to work as an analytical chemist intern at a paper company, not Dunder Mifflin.
Oh, damn.
So, same question every time. It was actually a local paper, not like it's a global paper company, but it was called Gladfelder,
Okay.
PH Gladfelder. They were near Gettysburg where I went to school, and so I got this job as a local chemist intern as like a summer job. But it also, I, I liked it. I did pretty well at it. So actually, they wanted me to work throughout the year. So actually, Gettysburg, which I don't know if co-ops are a big thing they do, they counted it as a class each term that I worked there.
That's cool.
So I got a class credit for it, but I also just got this paying job.
Yeah.
So I worked as an analytical chemist all the rest of the way through undergrad, and I did my research at the paper company for my senior capstone project. So I developed a method for them to um, something you want to think about, but to look at trace metals using EDS and an SEM. So we
Huh.
calibrated it with inductively coupled plasma optical emission spectroscopy. Big name, but basically you can quantitate any metal down to parts per billion levels, and it's extremely simple way of doing it. You basically heat a solution of these metals up to 10,000 Kelvin, and then you can see all their emission lines for 60
Oh
plus
yeah.
elements. Yeah. So the paper coatings have a ton of, I did not know this, it's paper. You don't think about it much, but
No.
when you get into a paper manufacturing company, you need to know these levels down to a certain amount because it affects how the ink writes on it. It affects all these properties. It's kind of interesting. So that's what got me into materials too, is realizing
Paper.
even paper is in its entire own
Yeah.
world. So yeah, I did that, and that was my only really research experience. I did a little research at BD too, helping to develop methods, but Drexel was my first purely academic venture into that world. So
And when you came to Drexel, were you did you come specifically to a lab, knowing what their research was?
yeah, with how so I was mainly, and that's the thing, going into grad school. I learned this from talking to professors and obviously other people going to PhD. I kind of was applying to labs more than applying to college.
Yeah.
So because you can honestly, it's hard to tell the difference between if someone's materials engineer or chemical engineer or chemistry physics when you get into what their research is. So yeah, I came in and Drexel does this, as you might have talked on the show before. You come in with a specific professor. Some universities you come into the program, spend a year trying out labs, and then decide. At Drexel, I started off actually this summer before classes started for my first year. So I started
Mhm.
research before I started classes.
Yeah. So did
Um,
I actually, because I was like,
yeah,
why wait? Why wait?
yeah, yeah. Which is kind of, I mean, it's nice that way. So you're not wasting time just taking classes and
Yeah.
not knowing what your research is exactly going to be. So it helps
And
to
you got to
tailor.
and you got to immerse yourself in the research before you're also doing classes, which
Yeah,
was
and it gives you a chance to
nice.
meet people in like
Yep.
your lab beforehand, and you don't have that awkward first day of school experience.
Yeah. No more of those, please.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you came in, ready to work for Dr. Lee. What was the focus of your dissertation research? I guess you don't have to give us your full thesis presentation, Mark, but
Yeah, nah. I'm tired of giving that presentation.
I bet.
um, so the main thing are the general overarching theme is polymer crystallization, and polymer physics of ordering processes. So basically, using it's a pretty diverse lab. So when I say this, I'm saying it for more my project, but in Dr. Lee's lab, we did everything from solid polymer electrolytes for batteries, biomedical materials,
Hmm.
electrospinning polymers for fiber mats, bone scaffolds, things like that. And my focus was just purely mainly polymer crystallization and its influence on the ordering processes, on nanoscaled polymer materials. And what I mean that everything we made were basically polymeric particles, using a generalized solution crystallization within emulsion droplets.
Okay.
And basically, we took the concepts related to solution crystallization of polymers that usually form single crystals, and we confined that within solutions within these emulsion droplets that were on the micron scale to whole way below 100 nanometers. And then we focused on phase separation within these droplets, polymer blends in the droplets, semi-crystalline polymers have different growth habits. All of these just focused at this nanoscale confinement. And through this, we developed a number in my thesis. It's 4 chapters and it's 4 different systems we developed to produce drugs for drug delivery, optoelectronic semiconducting polymers we use to make polymers that just based on how we control their crystallization in this droplet, we change their optical absorbance. A whole number of things we did.
So based on the crystallization, the properties would differ, and based on the specific properties, they were good for certain applications.
Yeah,
And
so
you
it started
demonstrated that.
it started with what polymer you used. So we use polylactic acid a lot because that's one of the main biocompatible semi-crystalline polymers. I believe it's also approved by the FDA to be used in biomedical devices and things.
PLA, for anyone's heard of that, right?
PLA, yeah,
PLA.
you'll hear about it a lot. We use that for mainly making these capsules with controlled porosity, controlled mechanical strength, controlled surface chemistry for drug delivery. Then we chose another polymer we used was P3HT, which is used poly-3-hexylthiophene. It's just one of those polymers in the class of alkyl thiophenes that basically used in solar cells a lot. It's a conjugated semiconducting polymer. The interesting thing about it is that when it forms single crystals, it forms 1D, one-dimensional rods. It doesn't form the planar 2D lamella you usually see. So what we did is we confined a 1D rod to grow in space. So that was our initial thing. We just wanted to see what happened. And then we showed that if you change the curvature of the droplets and you subsequently change the different size of different confined space that it curves in, if you make a smaller curvature, it causes the rod to bend more. It absorbs at around 100 wave numbers lower, or wavelength lower. So you can actually tune the absorbance from one end of the visible spectrum to the other just by changing the curvature of the
that's very
nanoparticle.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Are you gonna be? So you have a job lined up, right? So.
Yeah, I just waited on the background stuff, but I got an offer from TA Instruments. So if anyone doesn't know, they're the people who make all the thermal analysis instruments, DSC, TGA, the rheometers, microcalorimetry. They make all the instruments, so I'll be a polymer scientist there. So
is it gonna related to what you've been doing, because it's your polymer knowledge, right?
Yep. So just polymer physics of that.
Do you know if you get to kind of design your own experiments? And
I haven't started yet. So essentially I'll be on an applications engineering team. So that's the reason I liked it. There's travel. They said you get to go to universities, places to basically help people find what TA can offer to help them solve their research or those problems. Work with different aspects of the business, marketing, customers directly. Also looking into a number of other things, how we can use the instruments, how we can improve them, put more functionality on them. A big push these days is doing what TA calls hyphenated technologies. Basically, you're doing IR plus DSC at the same time, IR rheology, like in situ techniques, where you're combining all these things to make them more useful. So I'll see exactly what I'm doing. When I saw the job description and for all the interviews and went through, I know it's kind of where I want to be, where I get to do a lot of different things in this
Yeah.
role, not just one thing that you're doing all the time, and that's your job for eternity type of
Yeah. That's
thing.
kind of the nice thing about working for an instrument company is there's tons of customers using the instrument for a bunch of different things. So you get to
Yes.
touch all that.
So you
Yeah.
really don't know what kind of sample you're going to be looking at, and that's kind of
Right.
where you need polymer people, you need ceramic people, metal people, you need kind of everything because you never know
Yeah.
who's going to have the background which can solve the problem, and that's what will be fun. I mean, if you get your PhD, you better like solving problems, and it's kind of the things you,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I did an episode a few weeks ago that was about the skills that I gained that were not related to my materials science
Oh yeah.
degree, and those include troubleshooting, jerry rigging, and
Oh yeah.
all of that other stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Good luck with your job.
Yeah.
Let's jump back to your PhD a little bit. So, um, what? Let me look at my questions here. What was something that challenged you when you first started, or whenever at any time?
Yeah. So the one thing I think, I had a very hands-off advisor, and
Mm,
he really liked new ideas. Like if there was
okay.
something interesting, let's pursue it. But sometimes, and a lot of times, that led to complete tangents. Just
Uh-huh.
here was the goal that we talked about, and here's the direction we're going if we follow this new.
Because of an idea.
Exactly, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's keeping things focused on what your ultimate goal of. You know, you need to finish eventually. You can't be a grad. Some people try to be a grad student forever, but you
Yep.
ultimately in life you don't want to be that. So that was kind of a challenge, learning how to kind of stay focused a little bit.
Yep.
I want to say a very specific situation to a lot of people would be COVID. That was kind of challenging when you can't actually go into lab, but somehow you need
Yeah.
to be productive. Especially that occurred right directly after I did my proposal. So that's when
Mm.
you need to
When
be
you had
doing all
planned
the
all
things
these
you're
experiments to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone here has that's a very case specific thing for everybody at this time. But
It is, but it's also field specific and
yeah,
as
yes,
far as it hits you, like there's some work you can definitely do better remotely, and there's people who are working with mice who can't
yeah, it's
do anything. So,
yeah. So
yeah.
from if you're an experimental scientist or anything, it really would hit you
Yeah.
harder than if you would be doing simulations or something. But that was. But I think the tangents were some of the hardest things that probably hit, and then this goes into just like what advice I would give myself too, like early on before time management and staying organized. I mean, you kind of get asked to do a lot more than you sign up for when you're a grad student, especially if
Or that you
you,
think you sign up for.
yes, you,
Yeah.
you get a one-page paper of your letter saying, I think ours even said like you're expected to work 20 hours a week or something.
Yep. Yep.
Something ridiculously low. That's what it says on the thing, but you end up teaching, mentoring a number of projects that you might not even be related to. So
Yep.
it's time management's the biggest thing. I think that and it's not really it's just an overarching problem that keeps coming up unless you're extremely organized. So it teaches you organization
Hmm.
just by default being in a PhD. Like you're not going to graduate unless you have some semblance of organization.
True.
Yeah.
No, that's really good advice. And the earlier you realize that, the
Hmm.
more successful
Yeah.
and
And quicker.
even quicker,
Yeah.
quicker you can get out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Would you is there anything? Well, you sort of just wrapped up, but um, what's something that you're gonna miss about the PhD life, if anything?
Um, you are in, so it is like the one time in life where you can, I guess it's depending on again who your advisor is. It is,
Yeah.
and my dad also got his PhD, and he kind of told me this before, so I kind of knew it, and that it'd be something I missed. But it's the one time in your life you really get to just focus on one problem, and really you don't have to worry about your advisor takes care of all the money,
Mm,
the bureaucracy, the talking to well, at least mine did, talking and all of the kind of behind the scene details, and it was really just focus on this one problem, and this is the question that you're going to dedicate your life to advancing scientific knowledge in this area, this field, something like that. And in life, you really don't get to do it. Like working for a company, my question that I'm answering is their question that they have, and
because
it's
that's where the money
that's
is, right?
exactly. And then even if you go on to become a professor, you're still looking, where's the money? I mean, you might be extremely interested in some project, but the
there's no
NSF isn't
funding.
giving grants to people who are doing that year. Like,
Yep.
or
And you're also worried about getting tenure and getting students, and there's
exactly.
just
So
a ton of other things you have
the
to think about.
pressures I feel just go up as you're coming out of this because you got to turn something that still growing into grad school. You like to do science. You're still a student. You get to learn. You get to explore that area with little worry, but eventually you got to make a living. So, and you got to turn your hobby of loving science into a paycheck in some way to
Hmm.
support yourself and the ones who are depending on you. So, that'll probably be the one thing where it was a very free, little kind of a bubble in life. Kind of, you say it's a
Yeah,
stressful bubble because it's a lot of hard work and you got to get it done. But,
absolutely.
and again, it is a very difficult time because you're learning all those skills that you're interested in, but they are challenging. And if they're not challenging, then you should probably look at how hard of the thing you're doing is. Because if it's an
So
easy
wise,
question,
Mark.
a lot of people can solve it. And
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Or it's already been solved.
Yeah. And you just
Um,
didn't read it. So,
yeah, yeah. Read more. Um, do you have any fun stories or memories that you'd like to share?
I was just kind of thinking about that when you kind of just sent over just a couple of those. And I just have to say the like rogues gallery and the random nights you
Yeah.
have. I mean, there's memories
They're
like
closed. They're closed now. The
yeah, I
co-
saw that, but
they're gone because of COVID. So sad.
yeah. So was a lot of places in Philly. So that
I
was,
know.
and some places got so expensive it wasn't even worth
Yeah.
going out in the cities. But just those random little breaks you have with just like the group we had when I first came there, and then eventually got to know everybody, and then that like little group that we always did stuff with, like that. Drexel doesn't
Yeah.
really have one of those now because of
Yeah.
COVID and stuff.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's
But I think you're right. Like not even like the special events we went to, but just like the Fridays after someone had a tough day and they were like, let's go out and I need a break. And we all
yeah,
just like went out, and it was fun because you were with people who got it. Like
yeah,
they knew what you were going through.
yeah. So yeah, it was those types of things are always best. The pre-planned events or the department things, they were there,
Yeah.
but it was free food
They were
sometimes. So,
there.
but those are the things.
Yes.
From a research standpoint, I have to say my coolest memory is working up at Brookhaven National Lab on the
Oh,
synchrotron light source to do
cool.
X-ray scattering, and that was just cool because the guys actually just trained me how to run their beamline, and I just got to
Yeah.
run it by myself, like when I went up there because I went up
Wow.
3 times. So research-wise, that was my coolest experience. That
Did you have to apply for that for time on the
yeah,
beam?
you basically write a proposal for beam time access,
Okay.
and then you write it to a specific one. I think they have 20 some up there, and then
Wow.
it's really stressful though because you have 2 or 3 days, and then you
Yeah,
have
you got to get it in, right?
three segments of 2 or 3 days, and then the other thing is so you're basically in there 24 hours a day running everything you can. And what your professor doesn't tell you is that the proposal's written for your project, but you're also going to get boxes of samples from everyone who hears that you're
Yeah.
going up there to get
While you're there.
their
Yeah.
quick work done because it's so nice and fast. So yeah, it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun too. So
I remember we used to go to I went to Oak Ridge National Lab a few
mhm.
times, and what they also don't tell you is that you're scheduled for like a week, in 6 months, but then if the beam goes down,
Yeah,
everybody gets shifted, and you get your time smaller, and it's never a sure thing, but it's a really cool experience
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Um. All right. Well. My last question is just now that you are a doctor, what and you're gonna have a real person job and be a real person. What are are you planning to dive into any new hobbies or like do now that you have like free time sort of?
Um, yeah. So one thing, I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a farm in a small
Hmm.
town, and I always like to like golf, do things outdoors. And I don't know. I guess I kind of took it for granted because I moved to Philly, and then
Yeah.
I was living in
And
the
you
center
think
of a city, which I always wanted to do because I can't stand when
mhm.
people goes like people from around where I live were always like, oh, the big city. I hate big city. First of all, it's Philly. Once you live there and then go to
Yeah.
another city, you're like, it's not that big. But
Yeah. What big city?
um, yeah, who were like they said they would hate living in a city, but they never did. And my
Mhm.
parents grew up in the same small town I did, but they lived in New Orleans for 4 years where my dad
Mm.
got his PhD. They said it's a
Mhm.
great experience. Never want to do it again, but we at least did it.
But you did
They're
it.
like it was
Yeah.
so fun when we were there, but um, so yeah, I think just we moved out in a smaller rural place in Pennsylvania again. So doing things like going golfing now that I can afford it
Mhm.
too because I have a job. I love doing that. Just couldn't afford it and no place to do it where I was living in Philly.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, in the big city we have golf simulators.
yes, 5 iron golf. It is fun though. So
Yeah, it is. It's a little expensive, but
yeah.
so is real golf.
Yeah, I definitely plan on it and definitely taking vacations. Like that's one thing you
Mhm.
see is like I work for a company like you do a lot of work for free and don't take time off when you're a grad
Yep.
student. Now you have your PhD, like you prove that you're a very useful person. You can get done a massive project. So again, you can view yourself more of like an asset and that your time is extremely useful and worth a lot. So unless you're getting paid, take your vacation, take your time, and that's what I'm going to do. So
Yeah. Yeah, you'll welcome to having PTO. It's really nice.
yeah, or something like that. When yeah, I remember on vacation that doesn't stop your advisor from asking for a paper or asking
Uh,
for something that's going on or something like that.
I hear graduating doesn't stop your advisor from asking you for a paper.
So yeah, luckily when I wrote how I wrote my dissertation, each
Mhm.
chapter we published as a paper. So
Nice.
that was really nice. So we basically just wrote the paper, submitted it, and that was the chapter. So
Plopped it in. Yeah.
that was a nice way to do it. I know when I came in, there was the person who I was coming in who trained me when I was in there. She graduated, and after I'm pretty sure a year and a half of her being gone, we finished up her last paper. So
Yeah.
me and
So she
then
couldn't she couldn't let go
yeah,
for a year and a half.
the one postdoc we had, me and him worked on in the one grad student we had. We pretty much she left and then she had all these results that were actually they both got published in Nature Communications, so they were really good. It was really good work that
Nice.
she did, obviously. Um, but there's those types of papers require a lot of follow up.
Mm.
So, but she's not in the lab, so guess who has to follow it up? The new grad student who comes in. So I spent a good
That's
chunk of my
you.
time doing a lot of work on that, but it's good in a way because you're getting your name on papers. But
Yeah, early on.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we kind of learned that with me. We actually probably going to submit this paper next week. I was just working on it today and finishing up some things on it. But yeah, so it's not as bad. I'm pretty sure we got
Not as
everything
bad.
done, but yeah, we kind of made sure they were written for manuscript before I left, and that I was available to do anything. That
That's good.
yeah. We have a
It's a
new
good
student
plan.
though who, in case anything needed finished up, we put him as second author on all of them, but he actually didn't really
Oh,
do any of the work, so
nice.
he just got a bunch of publications. So
Well, that's great. In case the reviewers come back and they're like, we need this experiment, right?
exactly. So he's there. I'm not. So
Um, do you have any tips for managing the whole like job search while wrapping up? It's very stressful, isn't it?
it is because it's something you keep telling yourself in the mind. You're writing. The closer you get done to being done writing your defense date. So I unwhat so most people I would say how early do you start looking for a job? Like months before your anticipated graduation.
Yeah.
I didn't go that far ahead. I wanted to have more of a set date in mind because I also didn't want to get in the position, which I heard people before, they had a job lined up and then something got pushed back in their PhD
Yeah.
and they couldn't
And
start.
sometimes
Yeah.
And sometimes you won't get an actual offer until you have a defense date. Like they
Exactly.
know.
And
Yeah.
that actually, when I was interviewing, I was like, actually had an interview with the job. It was the morning after I did my defense.
Oh
So I
wow.
was like, actually, so I let him know I actually did my defense yesterday. And
Yeah.
he said, good. He's like, there was somebody else we were looking for a position, and they kept getting it pushed back, and they couldn't go ahead because they just had to fill a position with somebody and stuff. So that's kind of why
Yeah.
I waited, so I could tell them this is the day. In my cover letters, I put the exact date and that I'd be
Yeah.
available to work the next Monday, hoping that somebody wasn't going to ask me to work that next Monday. But
Right.
either way, yeah. So what I was looking, I was obviously I wanted to say in something I did. I really enjoy the polymer research, so I was looking at
Hmm.
that. One thing is don't get if you see ignore the experience that they ask for.
Yeah.
Preferred 5 years industrial experience. If you have a PhD, just tailor your cover letter, your resume to show where you've made up for that experience in your own experience through research. Um, Make sure you read the full job descriptions.
Mm.
Big thing. Because some companies, I just for the TA one specifically, and some at DuPont and places like that, you'll see there's different job titles, and they all like lead polymer scientists, associate this. They'll be different. If you read it, they're all kind of looking for the same type of applicant or person. And then I
Hmm.
found at TA there were 3 different job openings with 3 different titles, but all the job descriptions were the exact same pretty much. They were just looking for that type of applicant, and then they
And
were going to
because
decide
people
on,
Google different
yeah,
words.
and then they were
Yeah.
going to decide on job title after. So a
Yeah.
lot it helps if you reach out to just the look at like what sectors, if this is for industry, what sectors like they have in the company where
Hmm.
your position would most likely be, and if you see that's hiring for something that's in the realm of what you
Yeah.
think, get your resume out to there, a cover letter that's geared towards more specific what they're doing, and just show that you have valuable things for that you
Yeah. The
can.
title is definitely less important than
Yes, the
the
people who
content.
write the title probably don't even really know how to describe it most
Yeah.
times. So, yeah,
Yeah.
those types of things. And I applied to a few postdocs. I heard back from 1 or 2.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't really pursue those. I was looking more in industry, so I can't really
Yeah.
speak to that, how to do that. I feel that's more of a, if you know a professor, that's better than blankly applying to them because they're looking
Yes.
for
And if
something. Yeah.
if your PhD advisor can make a connection too, that always
Yeah,
helps.
because they're usually looking for something extremely precise that fits their lab needs and things like that for a
Yeah.
postdoc. So that I can't really speak to or applying to teaching positions because I just
Yeah.
didn't really do that.
Cool. Well, it's good to have you on right after you went through this because it's all fresh in your head, right?
It is, yes,
Hmm.
just stay organized early in the PhD, and then when you get to the end, in writing papers and that experiment you did 3 months ago that now is extremely important to the story you're trying to tell, being able to tell, you gotta be able to find it quick,
Yep.
know what you did during it, and yeah, so that's a big thing. And at the end, you realize if you're organized, you'll get it done a lot quicker. You can still pull it together, just that,
Yep.
and yeah, make sure you're really clear with your advisor and your committee with like
Mm.
what your ultimate goal is and how it's all about advancing the field and just have confidence because you were the only person during that presentation who understands as much of it as you usually, possibly sometimes more than your advisor understands it. So
Yep.
any talk,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
your committee likes to pretend that they know, but they don't because you've been
yes,
doing it for 5 years
yes.
plus.
So and also realize that you know a whole lot about a very specific thing, and a
Yeah.
lot of people in
Yep.
the world don't really care.
That is true. And that's why once you leave your PhD, you promptly forget a lot of it because you don't need it.
All of it's still fresh in my head. So when people ask me questions, even in the interviews, I go to like talk about my PhD thing, and I'm like, they don't
Don't
even
care.
know what this thing I'm talking about is. And
Yeah.
So that's why you gotta, another thing, have interest outside of research. People don't want to talk about research all the time. Like,
That's true.
yeah,
That's true.
there's some other things that you can hold a conversation with, which,
Yeah.
yeah, it's always good to do.
Yeah. Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Staub. It's been great to catch up.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll have you back on in a little while, see how you're doing. Anything you want to plug? Any papers coming out you want people to read? Oh wait, everything's behind a paywall.
One came out, porous crystallisms via emulsion crystallization. That's an ACS macro letters. And then in macromolecular communications, a Wiley journal there. If you want to read about the P3HT semiconducting crystals, there's a paper in there on that.
There we go.
Those are the two. Those ones, if you really want to read my thesis, it'll be on Drexel's open access thing. Eventually, I don't know when they would post that. It's a real.
If anyone is having trouble sleeping, there's some reading. I think you
might get once you see what the first part of the intro is about, you'll go right to sleep. So it'll be fine.
All right. Well, thanks again, man, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks to Mark for coming on the show. If you or someone you know wants to be interviewed on Impact Factor, feel free to reach out via Instagram. And follow us for updates at ImpactFactorPod. Thank you all for listening, and have a great week!